You're good, Les.
Okay, everyone, welcome to our October meeting. We've got a pretty full agenda, so I'll just quickly get going on it. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from September. I caught one slight error on Manager's Reports, A, Financial Operations Report. If you look, Mr. Matthews reviewed the monthly report as of 9/30/20. It should be 8/31/20. And it says, including the operations report for the month, it should be August. Okay. That was one I caught. Otherwise, looks good to me, but. Okay, can we get someone to propose accepting the minutes with the two corrections that I noted?
I propose we
make that motion.
Okay, and someone seconded it, Grant. Show of hands approving the motion. It's approved. So our minutes from August rather, from September are approved. Let me just quickly go over the agenda. It's been a really good month again. Mike's going to give you some very positive financial numbers. Part of it being the result of the runway being closed in Gwinnett. We don't have much old business, although Mike and Angela have made some great progress on the leases. So we're going to talk a bit about the feedback that Mike's been getting from the tenants. David and Robert, this item keeps coming and going from the agenda. I believe it's 1885 Lexington. So if David's not here, Robert, could you fill in, or should we wait till?
I'm on the phone. My computer's booting up, but I'm here.
Okay. Okay. So, oh, there you are, number 4. Okay. And Diane's going to give us, I think the Lexington Carter's made some really good progress. They have a firm list of projects. So Diane can walk us through what that list actually means in the next steps. And then we're just chock full of new business. Actually, skipping over some of the stuff, the really big news this month has been the publication of the GDOT Economic Impact Report, which is a significant improvement in the numbers of the last 10 years ago. So Keith's put a lot of good effort in this, and he's going to update us. And then we just have a few other items. Another new item will be Grant, Mike, and we've had a meeting to discuss potential alternative strategies for our service development. Grant's going to update us on some interesting news coming down through the CVB and the Classic Center. They've split up, and there's a hotel tax proposed. So thank you, Grant, volunteered to help us. So then we'll also get an update on the micro park. And I do want to, don't let me close without all of us looking at our calendars for November and December. We did this last year. Both meetings seem to fall right on just ahead of Thanksgiving and Christmas. So let's talk about alternative dates, or even if we want to hold a meeting in December. So that said, Mike, any questions or any items anyone wants to add to the agenda? No, we're good to go. Okay, Mike, take it over. Oh, Mike, you're on mute. I think you have to unmute, Mike. Okay. Still on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm good. I got to get out of my share in order to get to my button.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, we did have a very good month. Gwinnett, unfortunately, around the 15th, I guess, they did leave middle of the month of this month, but we did have them all of September, and it reflects that we had some very good sales. Every single day, we were pumping fuel to those, well, to three of them actually. It was Midway and Quest Diagnostics, and then also the aviation school that we have here. It also has one at Gwinnett, so they brought their operations here 100%. So we were filling up avgas through them. But so looking at our revenue in the blocks, the actual, our avgas, we had a tremendous month for avgas, 54,000. Jet A, 211. And then oil, that was a little higher than normal as well. Leases, that's about the same, about where it normally is. Little higher because we did rent out the Colvin hangar for Midway, and that was a great help as well. Airport fees, UGA football's kicking in, so we have having some good airport fees. Not like we would if it was pre-COVID, but every little bit helps. Going on down to the expenses. See, the cost of goods sold for avgas and jet kind of goes hand in hand with the amount of sales we had. So that's fairly high. But oil, again, we had a little bit. Everything's pretty much in line with a normal month as far as the administration, services, maintenance, overhead charges. That's just a click and paste number there that's amortized through the year. And then other general admin's the same. So you come on down to the total revenue versus expenses. You can see we made a good $97,000, and in year to date 121. So I was really happy with September. I really was, and I'm looking forward to things getting a little bit better here as far as traffic. We're getting UGA traffic, believe it or not. The teams that we've had so far here, the home games, we've had some good traffic, more than what we really expected. We expected maybe about 30 to 35 airplanes. We might have got 50, 55 at the home game we had here. And so that helps us in fuel sales. A lot of them took fuel. Of course, it helps us also in our ramp fees and landing fees. And that's the revenue that keeps us going.
Mike, can I make a point?
Sure.
Two things. The number, and we're not going to go over detailed performance measures today, but the number that a strategic number that we don't really manage to, but it's one that is in our strategy, is the amount required by ACC Gov to support the airport. And this month, the change in enterprise fund was positive to about 30,000. We have no money this year being transferred in, so we are actually exceeding our strategic goal by over $30,000. So we are, through this year, we are actually totally self-sufficient. So that's something, Mike, to be really. And one other point, Mike, and I know I'm a broken record on this, but we're obviously the cost of goods sold, as I think you all know, it's on a cash basis. So this number is understated, like 98,000 to support 212,000. So there must have been fuel that, remember, we paid for a lot the prior month. So in the end, it should pretty much come out in the wash.
In the end, it does all come out in the wash, right?
Year to date. So
yes, right.
Those year to date numbers are pretty solid.
Yeah, they are.
So bottom line, we are something to be proud of, self-sufficient. Yeah,
I'm telling you, we're blessed to have that activity here in September, and some of October, because that will really help us with the way conditions are. And then hopefully charter will pick up too, and that will help us as well. we've had some pretty good days as far as corporate's been flying pretty good. Military's been using us some, so that's been good as well. So looking at the gallons sold, have avgas gallons, and for September, you can see the big difference in avgas for the actual month. You know, normally it's in the fives, high fives, mid fives. This was 13,000 that we had in avgas for September. And I would say that was the flight school that took a lot of that. And then also the Jet A gallons, you can see, you know, July 16,000, August 22, 23, and then September 60, about 67. So quite a jump with the traffic we had. And again, that definitely helped us through the year. And then the operations, that was also a good spike. Our normal operations pre-COVID was about 4,000 to 5,000, you know, this time of year. And so, you know, we've had 26 and then 24, and then a big jump of 43. That also includes some UGA football as well. So it was a good September. Very good.
Can I ask a question, and maybe someone else has one also? But maybe I don't think we've ever discussed this in much detail. This new flight school that's there. Just maybe who is it? Number of students. If you've done this, I will.
Sure.
I'll go offline, but we can.
Yeah.
On this.
Well, it's a flight school. It's the same flight school that Gwinnett has, and it's a guy named Tony. Very nice guy, very knowledgeable fella. He used to fly for Korean Air, and that's where he got all of his experience and a lot of his working capital. And so he came here and started, I guess, Gwinnett, and has been doing really well there. He's got several 172s, several twins, and a good student following. A lot of it domestic right now. All of it is pretty much. And so when he came here, a lot of this was pre-COVID when he came to us and started talking about it. And he wanted to do a lot like what Falcon was doing, you know, that type where Falcon had the students from China. He has students from Vietnam and Singapore. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he had some contracts already completed with those folks, and was going to bring them here, and then COVID hit, and of course it stopped it. So now they're just waiting for probably a vaccine, you know, for them to come over and start operation here. Now his operation with those students, he said, would be about 70 students.
Whoa.
Yeah, where Falcon had about 40 to 50. He said he could probably do 70, and he hired folks here as well. He's got a couple folks that are hired here as well. But right now, what he's doing here is domestic mostly. And see, Falcon didn't do domestic instruction; it was all international. So here he does have that opportunity. We do have that opportunity, rather, here at the airport to have them as a domestic flight instructor. So we got them. We've got David Clark that flies too. He's the instructor, and a couple others. But so that's kind of the history behind that company.
Thank you. So it's actually, once things get going, it's bigger than Falcon, and
that's what he claims. Yes, and I hope that is the case. I hope that, you know, a lot of this, because he is paying rent on that hangar, you know, and so I hope that, you know, he can sustain that and sustain this time you know, of non-activity like he wants it and needs it probably to make revenue. So we'll see how it goes.
Thank you.
Let me get out of here. All right, we'll go into the capital improvement project update. We've got a lot of paperwork flowing everywhere. A lot of paperwork. I've got work authorizations for the construction side from Holt for both the localizer and the Alpha project. Going to Mayor and Commission. I also got the grant agreement here that I got that just yesterday, I think it was. I need to put that through the county as well. And also I got the agreement from the contractor. So all of that is being worked. I'm reviewing it now, and then it'll be all worked downtown. But everything still is the same as I've reported in the past. So we plan on starting March 1st, and that just seems a good time for us. It'd be after football season, after winter. We feel that's just a good time, and I know Jacob and I talked about that, and GDOT's on board with it as well. Any
Well,
questions? Go ahead.
yeah, will we have to shut the runway down, the main runway, 927? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Isn't that right, Jacob? Just occasionally, but not.
Yeah, it's occasionally when we get within inside the safety area. So we're a lot of the projects we got, outside the safety area with the runway project, but we do have some grading to do up in those areas that we're going to shut down for along Taxiway Alpha. And then when we do the localizer, there'll be a minimal shutdown there for removing the old localizer and regrading that area. So.
Yep. So it won't be as long as Gwinnett, but we got another runway we can put them on. Any other questions on the capital projects? All right. So as far as marketing and outreach activities, the only thing I had was the newsletter. We did finally put that out yesterday. It was supposed to be an October newsletter, and we were working out some kinks in the platform that we wanted to use to put it out, and so it kind of went past that deadline. And so Sarah Gardner, our intern, asked if she could put it out early, and I said absolutely. Let's just get it out there. And I hope everybody's seen it and everybody likes it. There'll be some tweaking to it, and I want to add some things to it, like maybe some local folks. Maybe news from the tower. Maybe the tower chief could add something to it as well. And if you guys, if gals, if you want to add something to it, please let me know. I'll be glad to put it in there.
Look great.
Thank you.
Did everyone get a copy?
Yes.
The authority.
All the tenants. Everybody on the authority should have gotten one. I've added a few, and Jacob. I'm pretty sure I sent it to Jacob too, or put your name in there as well to get one. And and then I'll just keep adding names as I remember, or think of them. Oh yeah, and then Sarah put it on Facebook too.
Yeah.
Also, you can subscribe. Yeah.
Maybe the ASD working group, even though they're not a tenant, but
I did add some of them. I added good many of their names.
David Bradley kind of people. Yeah.
Added David.
Paul.
Economic development. I think Paul. I added Paul. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep doing that. We'll keep working at it. And let's see. Standard lease. Do you want me to just go into old business now, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Before, any questions from anyone about Mike's reports? Looks like no questions. We're good to go.
Okay. Well, and Angela can chime in too on this one if she wants. Standard lease rollout. She's been working hard on getting those leases done. We have revamped some of the designation, I should say. They weren't really in order as far as A, B, C, D on the east side. I should say on the west side, it was kind of order from what's on the west side, on the east side rather. So we're trying to make that a little bit more uniform and easier to find to a new person. A lot of the folks that have been here forever, they're just used to it. They know that's what it is. So we're going to change that up since it's a perfect time to do it. So we're going to be sending out the T-hanger leases and this month, looking to get them back by the end of next month. And then December is what we have planned as far as setting up a campaign, for inspections and that kind of thing. But I'm excited about it.
Any reaction, positive, negative, from the tenants?
Oh, no. Well, there's one thing in the lease that they have a problem with was the insurance. We require insurance, on aircraft that are in the hangars, and some of them, some of them don't carry insurance, but that is something that we're looking into, trying to find out if it needs to be in there or not. So we're kind of in the middle of that. But a lot of airports do require it, but it is kind of a gray area because it is hard to you know keep up with it. Number one, with all the aircraft that you do have, they may have it, they may not, but they never notify you. So it's really hard to keep up with. But that's the only thing, and I haven't heard anything else other than that. And let me just look at my notes real quick. Yeah, that's all I had on that.
Any questions for Mike? This is actually a pretty significant step. Something David, Mike, and Angela have been working on for seems like a year now. And it's been
Yeah, it has been. Yeah,
thank you for
it's
doing
been
it.
about 10 years, I think, since the T hangars have been revamped.
So, David, turn it over to you to talk about finally I think it's 1885 Lexington Road.
Yeah, that is one of the. It's three. It's three parcels. That's one of the street addresses that it's going under the name of. My computer is just now coming alive. Sorry about my technical difficulties here. It's 1825, 1885, 1889 Lexington Road. We've met with, or virtually met, Mike, Angela, me, and Robert. We've had a few conversations over the phone. We met again virtually with the Smith Planning Group regarding this development. The area is on the north side of Lexington, just west of the airport, and occupies not quite 9.5 acres, 9.42 acres. They're seeking to obtain a special use permit for the property. It's going to be a mixed density residential, commercial general property, mixed use development, consisting of 156 bedrooms is what they're planning, and 202 parking spaces. Bear with me for just a second while things continue to load on my screen. Sorry, I'm not here visually.
By the way, David, I do have the map up on the computer too.
Okay.
If you can't see it.
Yeah, Mike, if you want to just talk about that while I continue to pull up.
Okay. So looking at the map, they had come to us a couple times, and a lot of the infrastructure was inside of our approaches, and so they had revamped it, not because of this. I think it has something to do with other reasons. Well, I know it did, but it did. The other reasons took it out of the approach lines. But we are looking at future RPZs and existing RPZs. The future one is, we want to add a 400 displacement on our west end of the runway, mostly to give airplanes more room to take off. But that is, something that's in the future, and we've hashed this out, amongst us all on the subcommittee, including Jacob. But we really can't look at the future. We have to look at the existing right now, because that is what we're living in, of course, and we don't know if the future will ever happen on that. We're hoping it does. It's on our CIP. So with that said, everything you see here, if you see existing or future, we're looking at what's happening in the existing right now. You up, David? Did we lose David?
So, Mike, with what you were saying there, if we did that 400-foot deal, would it not be allowed if this development is in place? Would this development prohibit that?
Well, either way, it pretty much, I mean, the density is a big issue. The people that will be there, because when you take off on the runway, say runway 27, which is going from east to west, the traffic pattern is a takeoff and then you turn left under a crosswind and then you turn left again on a downwind. And so a lot of times those turns are going to be right pretty much over, where that area is. Depends on the type of aircraft and how fast it's going, of course. But so that's a big part of it. It's the safety, and then the noise. That's very close to an airport. We have Delta leaving. Well, just the other weekend they they came in and left at 2 a.m. We didn't get any calls, but I guarantee they would be waking everybody up in that location if they did take off. If they were there and they took off at that time. Because it's very loud. So there are some safety and there are some density issues there. Hey, David. I did go over the map, told them about the existing and future RPZ. We're looking at the existing, and we were just talking about traffic patterns and density, where that goes.
Thank you. A little bit dropped off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I don't know what goes on this computer. Yeah, so like Mike was saying, it's very close to our property. It actually there's a series of airspaces that it is underneath. Not merely the runway protection zone, which it's abutting, and potentially the future runway protection zone, but also the AZ2 area is the larger than utility runway non-precision approach zone and the transitional zone. So there are three subzones that this property is right up against, and it's for those reasons that the operations committee, having met with us and also spoken to Mike and Angela, and taking recommendations from Jacob, it's our position that we make a recommendation to the airport authority, that the airport authority makes the recommendation to the mayor and commission to not approve the plans as submitted for the multi-family dwelling property. I think that the operations committee thinks that the airport authority should make the recommendation to the mayor and commission that anything about this property and development be reviewed by GDOT and a 7460 study be completed by the FAA prior to approving any special use development. That's due to the proximity to the runway protection zone. Diane, raise your hand.
Yeah, a couple of questions. When they modified it, how did they actually modify it on the plot of land? Did they just move some of the buildings, or what did they do to actually get out from under the RPZ?
They made a series of modifications over the span of several weeks or months, I guess. They had to move things due to some environmental concern, not just with respect to the RPZ. Did they move buildings and things around? But they did. I got to cue my memory a little bit to remember the different pieces of these, but they did shift things, I believe, more southerly, southwesterly, and move shift more parking lot area towards that northeast area.
That's correct.
Adjacent to the
Yeah.
RPZ or the future RPZs.
I can see that, yeah. The other thing is not a question for you as much as, would be devil's advocate question, and that is, why here? Why not somewhere else for such a big development when they knew the conflict that was coming?
A lot of people don't understand airports, I think, and a lot of the zones and the safety issues, and all of that, the FAA that we have to deal with. I'm sure they probably do, but it's a tough one. A lot of people think they can just put things up all around airports, and that's what they've done here. And now we get calls and complaints about noise, but there's reasons for those, those zones, and whatnot. So.
But these guys have already had a turn down, so, I just wonder, is there no other tract of land in the community that they might have been easier, focusing on rather than this with all the uphill they should have known they were going to get?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm not sure.
Just a devil's advocate question.
Right.
Let's see. And David or Mike or anybody that's had experience with this, David, based on what you were saying as far as the kind of list of good reasons there against the development, how it would not be favorable and goes against probably good practice from the airport standpoint, would you expect, or from anyone's experience, is that probably going to give us support from the city, or from your experience with these, or is it pretty obvious it's maybe a battle? I mean, is that good enough reasoning, do you think?
Ultimately, the way the land use ordinances are laid out is that a developer seeks our recommendation, but ultimately the decision for any special use will fall on the mayor and commission. We give a recommendation, just like the planning department gives a recommendation. If historic buildings are involved, the historic preservation people will get involved. So we are just one piece of that, pie, and that pie is a lot bigger than our piece is. So, that's why not merely am I making, or we as the committee taking the position that the authority should recommend against this proposal, but really that if the mayor and commission is considering it, I'd like to see that they go forward with a GDOT study and the FAA's study, just to make sure that everybody is well aware of, what kind of waters they're dipping their toes into.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Les. Oh, you're muted, Les.
RPZ may be a new term. I've always used the term overlay zone because, I think that's the code of ordinances. So are they in the overlay zone versus RPZ, or is RPZ the same, a different word for overlay zone?
The airport overlay is the zone, is the three-dimensional area surrounding the airport. That's then divided up into subzones. So this particular part, or these properties, these parcels, are divided amongst three of those subzones.
Okay, but it is in the overlay zone because the code of, I'm hearing you say, and code of ordinances, the big thing is, if memory serves me, this was about 160 homes. And I believe in the overlay zone where you're only allowed 3 or 4 homes per acre. So this would be a dramatic violation, wouldn't it be? Or
well, these aren't single family residences.
It's like apartments, but yeah.
Right. In all of the airport overlay zone, multi dwelling properties are disallowed.
So they are in violation of the Code of Ordinances. Is that correct?
Well, they're not violating anything by virtue of them not existing yet. But
if they were to build this would be a violation.
Not exactly
Not if they're given a waiver.
It's part of their process to go to see. They're seeking a special use permit.
Okay, all right.
A waiver to allow them to build this property.
David?
Yes.
Just another point of context or an FYI, you know, in the Lexington corridor final report, one of the tensions there that's going to come into play with this in the question of approval is that there was a priority need for more what they called rooftops or bedrooms or residences along the corridor for economic development. And so, you know, you can see that there's going to be some tension between whether they get the special use permit and whether they're violating the ordinances and the need to actually support more development for residences. You know, that's going to be something that comes into the discussion, I think.
Sure. And, you know, and I want to make it perfectly clear that it is absolutely not within the realm of the Coalition Committee pay grade to make any sort of decision validity of the project or how we feel the project should move forward or not. It's merely to look at the proposal, look at the proximity and airspaces and districts that it's set within, and make it, you know, the committee takes its position to the authority. The authority makes, you know, upon the vote, makes its recommendation to the mayor and commission, and the mayor and commission does what it is that the mayor and commission do. That, you know, it's completely outside my scope and Robert's scope and any of our scopes, I believe, to weigh how worthy a project may be. And absolutely, I'm glad I don't have to make a decision like that as a commission member or the mayor. You know, but that's outside my hands. And certainly, I understand where you're coming from, and it's hard to negotiate that. But you know, we merely look at what the ordinance says and what the proposal says.
Yeah, I can just see that coming. I've heard that kind of argument before with some of these. But Mike, you've made the point before, you know, that, I mean, when we make a firm recommendation, even if the mayor and commission override the recommendations that we might make, or even the planning commission.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, even the planning commission, because from here, we have to write up a recommendation to the planning commission. They get together too, and they can either deny it or accept it, and then it goes to the commission. But yes, the mayor commission is the ultimate, you know, and you even brought up, Diane, you know, this location, it's just a tough location around this airport. It's, you know, it is on an approach. It's not directly under the approach. Don't get me wrong. It's outside of that. But, you know, if there was an aircraft that was going to lose an engine or something like that, you know, the thing is to fly straight. But I've seen several accidents where they want to turn back to the airport, back to the runway, and it doesn't work. And that's about the location where it would be, you know, where it doesn't work. And it's just, it's a dangerous place, in my opinion. And then the noise, of course, the density also is a big issue because, you know, the mayor commission, they do get calls. And I know that's the location where if a jet took off at 2 a.m., especially a 717, it would rattle some windows probably right there, and they'd probably get some calls. So there is some concern about that.
So David, can you make the recommendation for when the authority does? Do you actually list those reasons, the rationale for the recommendation against it? Safety, danger, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I think normally it's just a denial. Am I right, Angela, in saying that? Yeah, we have I guess, what do you call it, a paragraph that we put to the planning and the mayor and commission that we always use, if, you know, depending on if it's accepted or denied.
And then pretty much
And Mike,
they
you may have
will.
said this, but
Go ahead. Go ahead, Grant.
Go ahead, Grant.
yeah, Mike, you may have said this and I didn't understand, but regardless of whether we make an affirmative or a negative recommendation, is it still contingent upon what the Department of Transportation or the FAA may recommend, or is all that
No.
encapsulated together?
I mean, the FAA could come back from that 7460 and say that there are hazards, and they would say no. They would deny it, but maybe Jacob could speak to that. I'm not sure that if the FAA says they deny it, then they really can't build it. Is that right, Jacob?
Yeah, I would think so. I haven't seen one come back that way of this caliber. Typically, it's more on the lines of a tower, cell tower, that type of stuff that's a lot taller. But yeah, they would have to submit that 7460 and get approval for that area. And so I think it'd be what Mike's talking about, density driven at this point.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
any more questions? Then let's go ahead,
Yes.
Keith.
Yeah,
Did I
quick,
answer Grant's question first? I'm sorry.
No.
Did I answer your question, Grant?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah,
Grant.
just kind of quick. I mean, and I know your input to the deciders, the planning commission is limited, but I mean, if you look at the image we're seeing and the diagram in the bottom right there, where the airport runways in black, and I know that's tilted slightly clockwise, but then you see the little property outline there that looks kind of like a finger pointing to the end of the runway. It really, a picture says a lot of things, and that really looks like, that just shows how closely this is to the end of the runway there, and the flights, if they're taking off straight even. Anyway.
It is very, very, very close. It's, it's hard. I guess that's the best way to look at it. From there, as Mike was saying, you've got large planes that are generally taking off and landing 27. The winds are typically out of the west, then they take off and land into the wind. So they'll be flying directly overhead, still at fairly low altitude over this property. Any of your small planes that are operating within the traffic pattern, the traffic pattern is a series of left turns. So when they come out, going from right to left, taking off on 27, they depart, they make that first crosswind turn, and they are directly over this property. They're making that left downwind turn, basically, as they turn just south of this property. And then, they're in the downwind along Lexington. So it's very close. I'm glad you saw that, Keith. It is extremely close to where we are. And to speak to a question that Les had about runway protection zones, that's the most stringent of all of the overlay districts. The FAA doesn't want anything in a runway protection zone. Period. It's non-developed. I think that's right, Jacob. They want essentially nothing.
Yeah. So the runway protection is actually the area it kind of mimics the surface going in, but it's actually the ground, and they're trying to protect that for potential, crashes or whatever, and trying to keep congregations of people out of it. But along with that, there's a surface related to it above that protection zone. So there's the way the FAA identifies it's just slightly different terminology. But
one thing that worries me is, I walked this area, and if you actually go to the back fence of this property, you can see clearly the end of the runway just right in front of you. I just hope that the members of the Planning Commission and even the Mayor and Commission will actually go and walk the property. They won't, but if they did, they'd see how shockingly close it is.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, David, are we, I think, unless anyone has any more, do we need more information before we get a motion? David, do we need two motions? One for, it sounds like you had two recommendations, one to reject this and a second to have the GDOT and FAA.
No,
Or is this one combined
you
recommendation?
can do one combined, and David's
Okay.
already made the recommendation with
Okay.
the, so.
So, okay, so now I would like, do we have a motion? Does anyone have anything more to say before we?
Yeah, his recommendation is the motion.
Okay, so. Do we
The-
have?
the
I'm
committee-
checking with Angela, making sure I'm right, yeah.
Okay,
The committee recommends to the authority, and then the authority makes the motion.
okay. Do we need a second? Do we need a second for that motion?
Yeah.
While we,
Okay, okay, Diane seconds it. How many people in support of the motion? 1, 2, 3, I can't see Grant. Yep, looks like it's unanimous. So, thank you, David and Robert. I learned a new word today, RPZ. So, and I think I'll take you up, Diane, and go for a walk around there. And,
Get a shot. Won't please you, but
yeah. Thank you, guys. Turn it over to Diane now. It's very appropriate, the Lexington Road corridor.
yeah. Mike, can you project the list?
Yeah, go ahead and start speaking and I'll try to get it up for you.
Okay. I sent all of you the list, and I also sent you a one-page summary of the points I'll make, which we don't have to project. I think Mike can just project the list. So let me just briefly speak to the list while he's pulling that up. First off, in the handout I gave you the little blurb out of the manager's snapshot. That's a good capsule comment summary of the user group and the tasks we face and where we're standing right now. There's also a website where if any of the projects interest you, you can actually go and look at the details, the budget and all the ins and outs of each project, plus maps. So that's there. Then right in the middle of the one pager, I gave you just the brief timeline. In a nutshell, what's coming next is that the second period for public input is coming in November. We had one round and it was kind of thin in response. So they're doing a second round of public input. And I hope that every one of you might also consider, as citizens, but also as members of the authority, giving your input. The big thing we're working on right now is they've asked us we've already prioritized the list for ourselves, and then we will have to come up with a group prioritized and ranked list, which I'll get to in a minute. 12 or December 10 is when we actually finish our rankings and get them ready for the mayor and commission meeting on the 15th of December is when the ranked list goes to the mayor and commission with a budget request. So that's the big target. And so, that's the overview, and I'll come back to the remainder of my one pager after we've looked at the list, which you should be able to see in front of you. Can everybody see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. As usual, being illogical, I'll start at the end. If you look right down almost to the bottom, you'll see a red square with writing where it says airport wayfinding signs, wayfinding. And there's a line through that with a red rectangle. That, we are happy to say, was the smallest item on the list, and it's already been taken care of. That was the one that I told you that the decision was made for immediate implementation because it was a small budget item, and there was argument in the user group from many of us about, does this have to go through the bruising process of being ranked and then submitted to the mayor and commission along with all these big ticket items? The decision was made no, to send it straight to the manager's office. So I'll let Mike comment because happily that's gone through and completed actually. Mike, do you want to comment on the happy news?
Sure, yeah. We had ordered the signs. Let me back up. I guess about maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, I identified about 19, 20 areas that I felt that the wayfinding signs would be really good at. And then a lot of the signs are the green signs, that you see down the road and it has the airplane on it, the white airplane. So those are the types of signs. So last Wednesday, the signs and all came in. So last Wednesday I went out with traffic management. We rode around to those locations. They marked them up, put stakes down there so that they could be located. And then once located, which hopefully it was this week, they were going to do that. I'm sorry, I think it was last week they were hoping to get that done. And then this week they were going to go ahead and install the signs. But I still hadn't seen some signs in areas, so they might still be trying to locate. But anyway, so that's where we are now. Hopefully by the end of this week or next, we'll have them all up.
Yeah, and it was a modestly priced item, wasn't it, Mike?
About $1,900 for everything, posts, signs, everything. So it was. I mean, it's going to be nice because no matter what direction you're coming from, coming off the loop, you'll be able to get a sign, and then it'll direct you to the next intersection, either right or left, and then halfway down you'll see a straight sign. Then when you get to another intersection, it'll be a left or a right. So I tried to really be thorough, in getting these signs up.
Yeah. So, that's the good news. It's not the only good news, but, I'm really glad that's been taken care of. And I think it does show that persistence pays off. Mike will tell you, we have been politely persistent for quite some time. Looking at the list, let me just point a couple of things out to you. The very top item on the list is the entry road from or onto Lexington Highway. That's the one that basically was, if you look across to the columns with all the check marks, the ULI was the Urban Land Institute study that was done prior to the corridor studies. They actually identified that as a need and a desirable feature that should be added. AIM is Athens in Motion. That's a big, generously funded project pertaining to lots of forms of transportation in this community. And then the corridor component was the corridor study. So anywhere you see a check mark there, those are things that are on this project list that have been given the sort of legitimacy and promotion nod by, most of the powers that be, short of the mayor and commission. The entry road from Lexington is the single biggest ticket item. And, obviously you're going to talk tens of millions there. But the thing about that is they haven't given us the actual cost estimate. They're going to do that at the end of the month. They promised. But it's high on the radar and everybody's agreed. I'll come back to that point. If you go to the bottom of the list again, just below the signage, you'll see airport monument sign on Lexington. One of the others, they also need to give us the estimate of cost for that, but they actually want some graphics from Mike in terms of design there. That's a small ticket item as well. You might talk, a few thousand there. They still need to give us that. Collectively, all the others, we're talking six figures each for the projects. So if we look at those, you will see, let's jump to the middle of the diagram or the chart where you see multi-use trails. I'm focusing on the airport-related ones here. If you see, there are three: Satterfield Park partial trail near the airport, Satterfield Park full trail around the airport. That's the plan, to have a multi-use trail around the whole perimeter of the airport that could then be linked to the Firefly Trail and also to Lexington Road, bring people, witness to the airport. That's a multi-million-dollar project, but that would be really nice because it could tie into all of the other things like Firefly Trail, access to downtown, the rails to trails movement, and the desire for trails in this community. What may happen there is that the first component, the partial trail, may get the nod. So you might want to look at those. They're big ticket items, but they are things that might actually be leveraged with funding out of Athens in Motion and out of some other projects like the Firefly Trail. So the big thing we've been hit with is all this negotiating and talk about leveraging, none of which we can leverage, but we're in on the discussion for the recommendations. So you've got the biggest ticket item, the entrance onto Lexington Road for the airport, with all of the implications for that. You've got the tiniest ticket item, which is the signage. Well, that's in place. You've got a little item, which would be a nice monument sign on Lexington where you can see the end of the runway right there next to the Walmart entrance. And then you've got the idea of the trails. that might loop around the airport and have multiple benefits. If you look at the bus stop sidewalk improvements on routes 25 and 26, my concern with ranking those high is that there's actually a bus stop improvement program with its own multi-million-dollar budget in place already. So using T-SPLOST funds for that is kind of awkward. We have to think about that. Intersection improvements, those are expensive because you're talking about making modifications to the signaling and the wires, overhead wires versus those arms. Pavement improvements, sidewalk improvements. Each one of those is a big 6 or 7 figure amount. And you can see the different road intersections there. The sidewalk gaps as well, lower down, each of them is a 6 figure separate amount. Some of them actually a bit more than that. But there's a sidewalk gap program that ACC has with a large amount of funding. So I think one of the problems with having all of these mixed up together on the list is that there is some that you might argue already could be financed by existing big multi-million-dollar projects or budgets. And then you've got some brand new ones like the airport entrance. So anyway, plenty of headaches ahead. We have to actually come up with a ranking from the user group, which will be then submitted to the mayor and commission. We'll have to take into account whatever public input we get in November. We'll have individual rankings and then a group ranking. So that's the list. I don't know if any of you have any questions about a specific one. I've got the cost estimates right now, but in the interest of time, I won't mention those unless you specifically want to know the costs for any of them. They're all way beyond the budget. All right, the budget right now, the T-SPLOST funds available for any of these is $4 million, roughly $4 million. So you can see there's going to have to be partial funding or leveraged funding attached to one of the other big budgets or something along those lines.
Diane, you mentioned that at the end of the month, the city's going to give a cost estimate, I think you were saying, of the Lexington entrance. So
yeah,
is there even a design or location yet for that?
We've been looking at those, Keith. I'm glad you brought that up because there's been some controversy on that. If you look in the corridor study, much of the focus was looking at the jail, the road that goes past the jail.
Yes.
And there was some rather cynical discussion about that that's probably not the most desirable way in to the airport for a brand new, nice, shiny entrance to go past the jail. It sounds like a joke or something out of Monopoly. There has been discussion because there are other access routes. There's a road called Maybury, there's a road called Hughes, and another one called O'Kelly. Interestingly, they're actually right in the vicinity of this big proposal that David's just presented.
Yeah.
But they actually would be feasible routes in and then to loop around the back of the property to the new terminal. Keith, your question earlier to me about the terminal.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that a couple of us on the user group are thinking about doing is saying we want to actually rank the entry road to the airport very high. But even if it's way outside the budget, one thing they could do is they could heed a request for a feasibility study about the entrances and what might work, because they don't do anything without a feasibility study. But it's the biggest, most far-reaching, but probably wide-ranging project on here because it could benefit the whole corridor. It could bring economic development and jobs. It could stimulate other services and functions to locate on the highway. And obviously it would benefit the airport. So if you look at what I put on the lower part of my handout, which is where we sort of are now, one of the things that started, bothering me is I realized if you take something like the Firefly Trail or the Greenway or the Rails to Trails project, etc., each one of those has a very active lobby group. It's a commission, it's a group, it's a body. They come under various names. every time there's a mayor and commission meeting about any of this stuff or planning meeting, the same old people show up. They make sure that they come with a prepared statement to advocate for that project, and it works. You know that the Firefly Trail received another $16.9 million. It's in, scores of millions in its funding. What's missing for the airport, because as I've said, in all the big studies and in talk already in the planning department, in the SPLOST office, even among commissioners, is the desirability for that entry road for the airport. What's missing is a concerted lobbying or promotional effort by a body that's advocating for the airport. And so one thing I would like to argue to you or propose to you is that who that lobby group should be is the airport authority. That's what we're charged to do, is to advocate for the airport and to promote its development. So if you look at some of the points I've made, one of the things that's come out that the SPLOST leadership have told us is that if you rank the airport entrance very high, even if it doesn't have any chance this time round, get it on the radar of the mayor and commission and keep it high on the radar with advocacy and with promotion for the next T-SPLOST, because they're already making a wish list for the next T-SPLOST. So if we wanted to be really savvy about it, that's what we should be doing. We should be actually advocating for it and actually starting to set our sights on the next T-SPLOST for it to be a big ticket item, big project in that. Now, by comparison, you remember, for those of you that were on the Airport Authority last year, the first thing that Leisure Services and the manager's office did about their micro park, they said, well, we need a statement of support from the Airport Authority. That was like the starting point, which then Mike sent in. We got a unanimous statement of support. So what I'm suggesting to you is I really would like to urge, first that if you want more information about any of these projects, go online to that website that I give you in the handout. Have a look at them and see what the budget is and what the ins and outs are. Provide your public input as a citizen, but then also as a member of the authority. And you can also give it to me to convey. And then I think that, it can't just be me hopping on about it. When the Mayor Commission receive the budget request and the priority list, I think that it would be ideal for several members of the authority to be there to speak in support of the airport related projects on the list. So I've given you some thoughts and action items, potential action items at the bottom of my handout. We don't have the entrance to Lexington or on Lexington in our strategic plan. That's another thing that we actually could consider building in for the long term. We would need a new goal to do that. It would probably fall under the first set of goals, goal 1.5 maybe. But I think that, we need to set our sights high and enthusiastic, because that is basically the way these other big projects have been funded. And the trail network around the airport is another thing that actually is not out of the question, because it's very likely if we advocate for it and it gets partial funding, it could be funded all the way via the Rails to Trails network.
Okay.
So that's my report, and I don't know, Les, if you want to see that as an action item at the end, or just leave it right now. But I think that down the road, I think we need to consider actively, promoting certainly, the airport related ones and the entrance. And if I'm going to be working, on the Finance and Planning Committee, updating the strategic plan, it's something I can imagine that we might want to be talking about, is to add a piece into the strategic plan aiming for that. Questions, comments? Left you speechless?
Yes. I think, we have to probably talk about some of these projects before we, and I've personally I guess I'll be honest, have concerns about taxpayer money to build the entrance at this point in time to the airport. So I think we've never probably ourselves discussed, such a big ticket item. So,
Well, I think talking about it is the first step.
yes.
And I think actually for each one of us to investigate and go into those projects and see what they're about, because all of them are taxpayer money, and where the taxpayer dollars come from is the big issue.
And the Lexington Highway Corridor Group, they were the ones that came up with this list. They're the taxpayers, of Athens-Clarke County. They were the ones that kind of identified this in their list as well. So they're on board, I guess. Right?
Yeah, and they made it a priority recommendation. It wasn't just one of the many. They made it one of the priorities.
And there were many to begin with. I think they dwindled it down to this, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. This is a much reduced list.
So when you mentioned us talking about it, should it be an agenda item for our November meeting, or do we need to have us as a group have a breakout discussion just on this before then?
Well, I think it should certainly be. I would request an agenda item just as an update about what happens with the public input. I really would urge you to go into the website and look at the projects. You don't need to listen to me telling you about them. I think they're all worthy, but they can't all be funded. There's far too much money involved. And I think, it will help you if you look at them. I would urge you to look at the trail around the airport, because it does have, multiple direct and indirect benefits that could, help the airport. As I said, the bus stop and sidewalk improvements ones could be funded and actually achieved through those other programs. So, there's a debate there that you might have within your own position. But at the very least, I know we would like to have an update, in the November meeting for where things stand next.
So
if you want any more details from me, I'll be happy to share other insights with you and keep you posted as we go.
So I would suggest an agenda item next meeting, and everyone, if you can, go check the website and get back with questions. So,
Okay.
Any other comments?
Okay.
Not, let's move to new business. First item, I'm not going to share the handout, but I've had some conversations with Mike, and Mike's talked with Josh. We have got the clarification. We had a meeting with Diane and Keith. So we're going to cap the number of measures that we're going to put into ClearPoint to 10. And I've worked on a new list, and it works out great because we want essentially a strategic measure, one measure for each strategy. So what I sent out the proposed list. I'll be working with Mike on how to do the operations measures. We've talked about maybe some ratios on the operations report. So next meeting, I'll send you more information. But Mike, I did get it down to 11, not 10.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes.
That's good. That's good.
And they're one for one. They were all like, did we achieve self-sufficiency? How many charter flights did we have? So they all tie back to a measure for the strategy. So the only one, and I'll work with Mike between now and the next meeting, and we'll come up with the final list of 10, and we can vote on it as a group. And we had too many. And then we'll talk about some of these operation measures are just an appendix to the financial reports and ratios. So I think that would never go in ClearPoint. Bottom line, Mike was able to get some good clarification from Josh, and we had a couple of calls, Josh, Mike, me, Mike. So I think we're pointed in the right direction now. And I may have been complicating this a bit. So we will keep it simple. Yes, Diane.
So what is your feeling about what you want me and Keith to be?
I would hold off now till we come up with the final list. And then I think you're going to see you would then take over. So we got the final list. I will bring it up for a vote. And then once we have that, we can talk about implementing it. Most of these are very straightforward to implement. So we actually, I'm almost measuring all the measures except for things we're not doing, like how many scheduled air flights do we have. So I think the best thing now, I turned prematurely, probably gave it out. Let me finish the proposed list, get your all feedback, and then we'll have a list that if you want to work with Mike, or I can continue just to make sure it gets into ClearPoint. So
Okay, so you're going to get our feedback at the next meeting?
yeah, and we'll take a final. I'll send it out.
Okay.
And we'll do a final vote of these are the strategic measures. But realizing that we got it straight now. We've got one measure per strategy, and they're all very obvious. And then you'll see on what I sent out to you where we're not measuring them. In most cases, it's because how do you measure how many students are in our training class when we don't have the training going on? So I've in the past we're maintaining these measures. They really don't take more. I could do them all in a half hour because this data is being captured somewhere else. So I just have to work with you, Mike, on some of these operations measures and how to just, the data's already in your report. It's just adding where you already have some of the numbers, maybe adding a few more to put some ratios in. So we'll come back with a final recommendation at the next meeting. So yeah, I'm glad we had our meeting because it brought the elephant in the room. We had all this big list, and we did get the clarification from Josh. So I think we're on board now.
Good.
Well, this won't delay you, Mike, in loading data, will it? Or even
No. So we're up to Keith and Keith's report now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, strategic plan status.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. I just have a couple of very, very quick, tiny items, and then basically from the committee, the highlight of the evening will be Keith giving the economic impact overview. Just a couple of tiny points on the strategic plan status. We've just been talking about the airport entrance, whether or not it's ever materializes or not. Just in my way of thinking, I'm looking at our strategic plan saying, where would it even fit if we were to decide to put in an additional goal addressing that? And obviously it might come under somewhere in the vicinity of goal 1, infrastructure, etc. But right now it's sort of shadowed, it's in the future, if at all. And then with Mike actually releasing his newsletter this week, we could add a tiny item under goal 4.2 there, because that is where it would fit really under the communication plan, outreach, communication, etc. So that's it for me for the month. Tiny items just mentioned, I think, are quite sufficient. The big update will come from Keith now. And Keith's done a really great job putting together a concise overview. He and I both had fun diving into and swimming through the technical report. And so we had a nice meeting last week, as Les intimated. And so Keith, we'll turn it to you.
One thing we used to do, and was the status, actually, the simple tracker. So there might have been 8 or so, pick a number, initiatives we're going to get done in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Which ones have been done, which ones haven't. Will you be updating the tracker? And so
we'll update it from time to time. Yeah, I think that the decision was made this time, that we should focus on the economic.
Well, no, I think really it'd be nice every month to know.
Well, we'll see
the status.
Yeah. Well, those are the updates informally. Next month we can do it again, or we can do it even more formally. Yeah, because they're all there. Okay. Keith?
Yeah.
All right. Mike, do you have our list, my document, GDOT summary document to post on the screen? I think I sent it to everyone. Does everyone have that document? Anyone doesn't have it? Grant's got it. David, do you have? David's got it. I know Diane does. So I think everybody would have it anyway.
Okay.
All right. So can you hear me okay? Fine here? Okay. All right. So the GDOT study is done about every 10 years, GDOT economic study of all the airports in the state, and there are about 120. The last time this study was done was in 2011. And what we wanted to go over with you all today, and the reasoning is, first off, so that we're presenting you the information and a little bit about the information, but because this also is the ties to our biggest measure of our purpose of the airport, being the overall economic impact, then where do these numbers come from? And when studies are done like this, we want the whole authority to have some level of confidence in how these numbers were created. And like Diane's mentioned, this is the summary I'm going to go over here is a 2-page quick summary from a over 100-page detailed report from GDOT that gets into a lot of nitty gritty. So we won't try to get too far with that. But as I go through, I'm trying to summarize some of the how that the study works, how do they come up with some of the numbers, and hopefully it gives you some clarity, and everyone on the board here feels some amount of confidence to kind of understanding that. Again, this is one of the things that the first part of the GDOT report states is that residents, businesses, and visitors all benefit from the state's well-developed airport system. And while supporting transportation, healthcare, tourism, and commerce, airports contribute to the economy. So there's a lot of things going on at the airport that does contribute to the local economy. A couple other points before we get into some of the numbers is that the GDOT study, it does look directly, it does look at actual historic data, and then it projects out through some multipliers that we'll talk about briefly. So that just kind of gives a little bit of a preview here. So what we've got in the summary of the numbers is in the blue section there where it has annual economic impact for the Athens airport. You see the columns are the number of employment. It has a breakdown between airport management and business tenants, and then capital investment, and then general aviation visitor expenditures, which is kind of a big one. And then it has columns with the employment for those, the total employment economic impact, and then translates that employment impact into payroll dollars. And then there's spending and the total economic activity. So for the Athens airport was $27.8 million, which was way up from the 2011 study, which was $20,600,000. And by the way, most of this information on the study is looking at late 2019 to early 2020 is pre-COVID. So it's looking at a recent full year period. So with the numbers there, we're going to break those down in a little bit to kind of, because, if you look at, for example, the employment at the airport, management and business tenants, we know that the 118 employment that it shows there is a bigger number than what's reasonably at the airport. We'll talk about that where I have a breakdown at the bottom. But before we get into that breakdown, a very important piece of how these numbers are created is where GDOT contracts out. Again, it probably takes them a year to complete this study. And they use a system called M-Plan that's used to calculate indirect economic impacts, which represent a large portion of the numbers above. And just to give you some brief information about M-Plan, it's a input-output program system. It's been developed and refined over recent decades. It's widely used by governments, companies, education, research institutes, and the FAA has approved the use of M-Plan for airport economic research, such as this GDOT economic impact study. And in this study, M-Plan mainly provides the estimated indirect economic impacts using input from actual known local historic data, current data that's actually known. So known numbers, as we'll talk about in a second, are going to be what are some of the actual direct employees at the airport, direct employees of tenants, and you plug that in, or GDOT does, to the system, and using M-Plan programming, it uses multipliers and adds in what should be reasonable economic impact numbers. and again, I give some references there in the detailed report. We can give you the link to it if you want to study it, but I give some page references with a lot of where we got the numbers from here. But just as an example of how the in-plan programming works, thinking of the indirect impacts for tenant information component, that's one of the pieces above. The in-plan study, it looks not just at an overall number to do some multiplier effects for the economic impact, but it's looking at specifically what does each airport have as the types of tenants, what types of businesses those are, and what economic impacts and multipliers should be used for that. And so there's similar components through the rest of the study to figure out the rest of the numbers and all. So it's very complicated. But just to summarize in-plan in a very simplified terms, the calculated economic impacts include direct impacts, which are using actual data, and then adding indirect impacts for additional jobs and spending that are created through the direct activities or the direct employment. So it's important to emphasize that the direct data are real numbers. They're not projected. They're not based on projections. So to kind of help understand this a little bit better, if you look at the breakdown table at the bottom of the first page there, you've got it all showing there. So just to orient you here, we've got, again, the airport management and business tenants, and I break that into a row for direct airport employees, direct tenant employees, and then I've got a subtotal for that category. And then the next one, which is also from above, is capital investment. And then the last big category is general aviation visitor expenditures. Then we've got tiers there, or sections, not tiers, for columns where you've got the direct impact in number, which is number of employees, estimated employees there, and then the annual economic impact of their payroll. And then you've got the columns for indirect, which is virtually calculated by in-plan system using multipliers. So you've got indirect number of employees and their impact, and then you have a total. So you've got the direct components and indirect. So to go through a piece of it here, and I want Mike to kind of add just a bit to it as we talk. When this study was done, there was a direct number, actual number of employees at the airport, employed by the airport was 11. This is based on FTEs, so if there's any part-timers, 2 part-timers would basically count as 1 FTE here. And the total economic impact of those direct folks would be, according to this study, about $2.5 million per year. Then direct tenant employees at the time of the study was 39. Their direct impact is about 3.3 million. So the total was 50 direct. And then if you come over to the side there, the 68 number of indirect, that's where the in-plan system uses multiplier effects based on the types of tenants and based on normal multipliers for our types of airport. And it figures that the 50 direct employees of the airport there and their economic impact would also have a multiplying effect of spending in the Athens area of an additional 68 employees with 5.7 million payroll. So that you take the 68 plus the 50 and you get the 118 total that matches up at the in the blue section at the top for a total economic impact of 11.5 million. So Mike, maybe just add a little bit, because to generate some of those numbers, actually, the subcontractors that were helping do the study for GDOT were on site, I think, Mike, for about a week at our airport, getting data. Yeah, and not just for this piece, but it was data in relation to capital investment and general aviation visitors, which we'll briefly discuss. Mike, you want to add anything?
Yeah, they did come. They spent about a week here. They went around, talked to all of our businesses on the airport. They actually kind of camped out in the terminal building and would talk to visitors and pilots and anybody that flew in, find out what they were doing. And, everybody was very, very nice and willing to give that information. So that was very valuable for this as well. The direct tenant employees, just to give you an idea, that is the tower. The tower's got employees. Hertz here has employees. GSP has employees. We have several aviation businesses here, avionics and maintenance. They have employees, and then also trying to think if Falcon was here at the time. They were, yeah. Angela says they were, so that included them too, which they had a pretty good bunch of folks as well. So that was the direct tenant employees, and then the indirect would be your construction that went on here. I'm not sure if Jacob, with Holt, I don't know if he's in that part of it or not. I imagine he would be probably in there as indirect, but so all of those, make up the 68 as well.
Yeah. So what I want to just check here quickly, see if anybody has any questions before I keep going. So basically just looking at airport management and tenants, we've got 50 direct with a direct economic impact of about $5.5 million a year. Those then, because of their spending in our community and the multipliers that are used by InPlan, that means an extra, they actually calculate 5.7 million in economic impact and then back into the number of 68 employees. And then so we've got a total economic impact from that piece of 11.5 million. Any questions so far? Or?
I will say this too, the general aviation visitors expenditures, that's the visitors that visit the hotels, the motels, the restaurants, the, everything, convenience stores, that's what they are.
Yeah, I was going to add on that. Well, let me just mention one thing. The capital investment there going on down here, like Mike, you were leading to there, the 7 direct, that's the direct employees who were hired to do any of the work on capital investment that we've had in recent years. That's not just that piece is not just looking at last year, but kind of the average of recent years. And then those 7, then their spending created an additional 11 equivalent economic impact in the Athens area. Then, like Mike is saying, general aviation visitor expenditures, that number of 134 there is the direct, that's the number of employees, obviously not at the airport, but the number of employees who directly were tied to data known about the visitors to the airport from the studies that were done, as we mentioned earlier, for the week and other things. How long were they in the community on average? What were they potentially doing? So that's calculating in things like for, Grant and even David there, how much spending, what were they doing potentially with time in hotels, taking a taxi or Uber or whatever from the airport into Athens, those types of direct impacts. And then those people then had an additional indirect multiplier of an additional 62 economic impact in the Athens area. So the total of all of that is there $28.7 million. And I give on the top of the next page, let's see, Les, are you driving or has Mike got it?
I am, I got you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Find my cursor here.
Top of the next page. Yeah, kind of stop right there.
Right.
Just kind of gives a few notes about it. Again, references some things that we dug into in the detailed report. So again, a lot of data. This InPlan study, the numbers seem pretty large, but it seems pretty credible. Again, a lot of it's validated across the country in a lot of uses, and the FAA approves the use for airports. Any other questions before we kind of put Athens in context to some comparable airports? So just looking at the list of 7 airports there, and I've just got them ranked by sizes. And to be honest with you, I just picked those out myself, whether they're exactly comparable, but they're kind of in the range geographically and similar in some ways. So you see, and what was their annual economic activity according to this report? Number 5 there is Athens with the 27.8 million. It's calculated as we were just discussing. So we're larger than Wander. I was surprised Wander is a little larger than Gainesville, actually. But then you've got the others above us there, 1 through 4, except for Gwinnett, are all commercial airports. So just kind of comparing to Albany in Southwest Georgia, a little over twice the size of Athens, and it's commercial service. I guess that's the reason for it. So again, back to kind of why we wanted to present this and sort of to summarize, we're thinking this is probably a part one of maybe a second part discussion. There's going to be a webinar that a few of us are going to attend that GDOT is putting on that explains more about these numbers. This is important for all of us to be somewhat confident in using these. It's our biggest measure. And again, it popped up a lot since the last report in 2011. But again, just some notes there. This report ties to our largest dollar value of our strategic plan measures. The GDOT summary for Athens Airport gives a good summary of Athens's key purposes. I didn't add that in here, but there's not only does GDOT have the 100-page technical report, but they've also got it's about 3 pages summary report about Athens. And when I read that kind of as a newbie to this team, I was pretty impressed at all the aspects of things going on at the airport. I knew about the state patrol, and I knew about the reserve there being in place. But I mean, there's a lot of things that the airport contributes regarding healthcare, forest services, a lot of economic development. And I think, as Les has mentioned, these economic dollars that Athens is contributing to the airport, if we can do it and continue to do it without taking money from the city, then it's all benefiting the city in a way at no cost. If you assume that capital expenditures are not exactly a cost, but more of an investment in getting this money. So that's a good thing for the airport. So then a couple of questions posing to the team here for us to consider potentially next time we get together, or just for us as a group, is how might we update the Athens number, the 27.8, on some annual basis by inputting our latest year's numbers to the in-plan system. I think we're going to find out more about that from the webinar. If it's a big measure, we'd like to get it more frequently than every 10 years. It's not necessarily easy to do, but it could be easier than what we think. So we'll find out more about that. Then the next one is question for consideration is, how can this information be shared in ways to help the community and our stakeholders understand the airport's value to our local economy? I mean, I'm just finding out about this and seeing a lot of values that I sure didn't understand. And then how should this information be used for the Athens Airport planning and promotion? So I'll pose that and kind of stop here and leave it open for others. Diane, I know, Mike, Les, I know you've kind of been involved in this. Any comments or other things? But this needs to be probably a group discussion that we all talk further about.
Keith, let me just jump in on that second last one about ways to help the community, stakeholders, etc. That relates to our strategic plan goal 4.2, because I mean, in my experience, that's a major priority that people, don't understand the contribution of the airport to the local economy and community. And so maybe having some numbers and insights that we can actually promote would be a real big help. But that's a really important one, I think, that we do act on and talk about as we move forward. People just don't understand, many of them don't even know what the airport does or how big a contribution it makes. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's just not here. It's everywhere. It is everywhere. And you just got to market the airport and let everybody know you're here. And what do you do?
I keep turning off mute. My dog walked in. No, I was trying to say we've already done. I agree 100%. This is the number one thing we got to get across the community is the economic impact. But Angela and Sarah have already put it out on the Facebook page. I think it's going to be added to the website. We'll talk about the annual report in 2 minutes. It's maybe page 3 of the annual report. There's a real nice page about it. Maybe, Mike, and we should continue. I'll make this an agenda item, Keith, next month. But maybe we could pass this along to the PI. I'm having a senior moment.
Jeff.
Information office.
Yeah. And
Actually, I did send it to him. I did.
Yeah. And so, and Blaine, all the commissioners have had it, but this number, maybe we come back next meeting with some ideas on how to further publicize it. So I'll make it an agenda item. Could be even a little poster in the terminal, commercial
we could
terminal.
do that. That would be good to have.
We might be able almost to just take the page Sarah's come up with. You'll see that in a few weeks. So So it's super. I think then, Keith, your point, I think what we hopefully can get done next few weeks is figure out how GDOT can recalculate us. In the past, you had to wait 9 years to get it, but they now are touting that if you send us a few numbers, they put it into this like a meat grinder, the implant machine, and you get back all these numbers. So I think Keith and all, we're going to try and get smarter through this webinar, and there's actually a phone number to call as to how we can keep this up to date without having to have an army of people do it. So, that's a great study, and that's almost the first thing if anyone asks about the airport. It just seems that it's
So just one last thing, I guess, especially Robert, David, and Grant, since you weren't involved in our discussions and working with this so much. Any thought, just kind of speaking open and honest here, questions with the numbers? Does it, if you're out there and we're, promoting the airport, does it seem credible, or it's things that we should look at with this further? Any input from you?
I'd like to say, I think that this information is very useful and worthwhile, and it may even be of import for us as we are, or however we may be connected to our local commissioners, that we share it specifically with them, saying from our point of view, you may have heard this, you may not have heard this, but I'd like to redirect your attention towards this information as someone, who is on the airport authority, but also living in this community, and how valuable this is. So us taking a time to, redirect this information from a individual standpoint.
Yeah, sounds good. Grant, David, anything
years
else?
ago when I was at the hospital, we did or had a similar study that was done by the Department of Community Health. And it was, I want to think it came out every 3 to 4 years. Georgia Hospital Association was pretty instrumental in getting it done. And it was, from the report you showed, it looked like it was pretty much a mirror, except it was for the hospital. And what was interesting through that process is we, the commission, everybody that was involved only thought about the hospital from the perspective of the people that go in and out. And when we educated, I know that sounds kind of didactic, but when we put all that information out through the community and you think about the pharmacies, the number of pharmaceutical folks that come in, the people that come visit, stay at hotels, eat at restaurants, attend football games, etc., that number grows pretty fast. And there was a host of people that thought that it was just a way for the hospital to prop up its numbers. But the reality of it was it kind of gave everybody an idea of kind of what was happening. And I think that we found the audience that was most receptive and appreciative of the numbers was indeed the mayor and commission, because once you started to think about bond issues that were used to fund different items, that was really a great carry for the county, from Blaine Williams. At that time, it was Alan Reddish, and a lot of their group to be able to communicate this out. So I think anytime we can get the information is good. The frequency, I don't know that I can gauge what the right frequency is, but as dynamic as the communities are that are changing, and how it impacts somewhere like Winder or Gwinnett or Augusta or the ones that are surrounding us, and understanding that the authority or the airport is there and can be a good conduit for others. I think anytime we can do that, it's a great way to do it. And the information can be eye-opening at times, as we see. It's not just the number of planes that take off and land. It's a lot of other things that go into that as well.
Sounds good. David, anything you want to add?
I think Grant and Robert said it more eloquently than I can, but
Okay.
Getting it into the commissioner and mayor's hands for sure.
Sounds good.
And let them disperse it.
All right, so Les, I think you have it for our next meeting, and we kind of tie down some further things that maybe along the lines with input here.
Yeah, I'll, next meeting, hopefully you can get an update on how to use these numbers. Like you've given me some thoughts, like I'll post it on our Friends of 5 Points and things like that. I do think if Jeff Montgomery could do something. So we'll discuss how to publicize this beyond what we've already done. And then also get a better understanding what it takes to update it now, which is a brand new wrinkle from what they used to do. And then we can go back, maybe it's every 2 years, but how do we keep these numbers? We can't wait 10 years for another update. So good.
Les, if you're going to post it on Friends of 5 Points, we might need to call Georgia Power to update the grid, because it might shut it down with everybody making comments from that thing.
Oh, well,
Yeah, I hear you.
no, not as bad as throwing your dog poop in someone's blue can.
It's a source of much entertainment in our house tonight.
Oh, it is. I never post, but this would be my first one. So I'll be brief over the next few, because we may run 1 or 2 minutes over, but not much. Annual report plays right. That's why we put this next. Sarah's been working on it for Grant and Keith. You probably wouldn't know that we actually did a mock-up last year using fiscal year 2019. The annual report's not a financial document as much as a marketing document with some key numbers, but also key accomplishments. So Sarah's been able to salvage, Mike, correct me, maybe about 80% of the last one. Mike's asked me, and I've worked with her. She's really good, as you see the newsletter. So we've got it. There's 2 things you wouldn't see that you'll see that you didn't see last time. One is a whole new page on economic impact. And then she took our the pie charts that show revenue and expenses, and built a great sidebar with some charts. Mike and I worked with her to show the impact of COVID-19. And I think that she did terrific on that, Mike. So
I think so too.
So it's 95% ready to go. What's left is dotting some I's and T's and proofreading. So I think Diane's going to proofread it. And David, I'm sort of blindsiding you, but I think if you I think more than most of us have got an eye for the graphics. And I think one of our issues last time was maybe too many different fonts, white space. And I think we still have some issues about that. So Mike is going to just distribute it. And then our goal is, once that gets back from y'all, Sarah fixes it. We should at the November meeting be able to vote and approve the document so it can be distributed and posted. And again, I think it's page 3 is the economic impact. And I think she did a really good job of summarizing it. So that's where the annual report is. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, just for your benefit, the report hopefully will be printed and distributed to places like the real estate offices, Chamber of Commerce, City Hall. But I think the bulk of the readership will come from the Facebook page and the website. So, and she has 2 versions. She's going to have a version you can print, and then there's what she calls the interactive version. So you'll probably see both of these. The interactive version is a little harder to see she's gotten creative and used some pages span 2 pages. So, and that's David, when you look at this, if you could just see about fonts and things like that. Okay, next thing was passenger service next steps. I won't go over that deck, but Mike, Grant, and I have If you remember last meeting, we had about 7 or 8 alternative strategies. I sent you out a list. What we're going to do is, as we went through this, I realized personally that we couldn't play Solomon and say alternative 2 is better than 3. So we need some more homework. So forgive my consulting analogy, but there's an onion that we want to peel. And for each of the alternatives, and Grant, if you can be my proofreader and stuff, and there may be 1 or 2, we want to do a little more homework on those and get back to you in January with some ideas. And, example of one of these might be a shuttle to Atlanta, an air shuttle, or maybe a bus. Another is point-to-point service. But fear not, Mike is actively still accepting interest and pursuing stuff. But this is sort of our contingency plan and things we might do. So we really weren't ready today with enough information to discuss this. So an example of some follow-up might be to call, one of our alternatives is to look at what they call AEAS. And Macon's done a very good job with that. I don't know if we like AES, but so maybe a phone call to the folks at Macon to get their firsthand ideas of how they made that work. So back in January, I know I'll be ready to just really take each one. It may be a little boring, but it should be interesting because I really think Mike is still, fielding calls, and we're still working and plugging away, mostly Mike. And Mike, I don't know if you have signed up yet for the Meet and Hunt conference, but have you?
Yeah, not yet. They haven't announced anything yet.
Okay. Yeah, but that's another example of where it's like speed dating, where you get to meet all the major companies. Okay, so that was the annual report. Diane, if you could just briefly talk about the micro park.
Very brief, because we want to leave the remaining time for the last report. Just a very brief follow-up. On October 1, Todd Miller, who is the park planning coordinator, met with Mike and me on site in the little park tract of ground, if you like, specifically to actually sort of look at the lie of the land, ground truth. So we looked at the drainage configuration because there were 2 drainage sumps in the middle. We looked at the higher ground where if down the road there were to be ideas about putting a park bench or 2 or picnic table or 2, it would be on that higher ground. We also looked at some other information related to the information he'd sent us previously. He sent us all the cost estimates and specs for different kinds of benches or installations. He talked to us a little bit about alternatives for a pathway through the little park, such as mowing even shorter. They do that sometimes, almost a low-cost alternative to constructing a path is just to actually mow a path very short and close to the ground. The main update, I think, aside from that, is that there is a master plan under development right now for all parks in the ACC community. And the goal here, I think, would be to get this pocket park, as it probably is going to be known, as on that master plan as one of the tiny parks in the community. It's got a much better chance than some of them that he described to us because it is potentially connected down the road to the Firefly Trail and to that multi-use trail around the airport I discussed earlier. There's a big push actually to get a trail all the way from Lexington and Southeast Clarke Park or Satterfield Park to downtown via the Firefly Trail. And so this little pocket park of ours has a good chance of being connected into that whole network, which is good. The timeline for this would be next year, probably. It's already late this year. Towards the end of the next fiscal year might be when we clear a picture of finances and so on. But actually the installations, if any, would be possible even through a donation of a bench or a table here or there. The park itself wouldn't need a maintenance budget because Mike has already confirmed that area is already maintained as part of the airport property. So it's moving forward, and I think it's got some nice quiet support from downtown, if you want to call it that. And we'll just keep you posted. But the big thing, I think, would be to get it as, to feature in that master plan. So I think that's enough for now, and I'll keep you posted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Looking forward to having lunch with you on the park bench.
On a bench.
Grant has graciously agreed to talk to us. Just a quick update. Chuck has retired as head of the CVB, Chuck Jones, I believe, and it appears a good time maybe that they are going to separate from the Classic Center. Along with that is a proposal to also increase the hotel tax because I'll let Grant explain it. So it's interesting, and and they were going to be one of our partners, so it's a key player. So go ahead, Grant.
And I'll do my best to keep it brief, but also relay the information as I know. Certainly much more of this will come out, and I think they sent out an email or will continue to about this, so you'll probably see more. But make a long story short, the Classic Center, as many of you voted, as hopefully all of us saw, approved the SPLOST package to build an arena to become, I believe that's supposed to be done in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Long story short, the SPLOST package contained only the arena, and I think that was supposed to be for about 75 million-ish. The commission came back and said, we'll give you basically half of that. You've got to raise the remainder. And so out of that grew Paul Kramer's marketing package to build a hotel to support the difference between SPLOST and the commission's agreement for the funding. A lot of things grew out of that discussion, and what was not included in the SPLOST package was a hotel, but it was communicated to some that it was. So there's some confusion, and as they all got together, they being the hotel association with Paul, worked out, long story, an agreement that we would take the movement of the hotel motel tax from 7% to 8% as a legislative acceptance, and that 1% differential, not the entire 1%, but a portion of that 1% would be used to help build the debt service for the arena in lieu of the Classic Center building a hotel that was originally scheduled to be built over the parking deck in an air rights plan. With that increase in the tax percentage came the necessity for the CVB to separate from the Classic Center Authority into a 501c6 organization. All of us are familiar with 501c3. That is a organization that's exempt from income tax on the basis of charitable purpose. Really, the only difference between a 501c3 and a 501c6 is a C6 is organized for the benefit of the members of an association. So it's not really a non-taxable charity, but it's organized to be non-taxable because the members of the association or organization operate for the same purpose. That, of course, is the CVB, or the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I don't know that I can say this is because of it. Around it, I think Chuck had some desire to retire, and so he submitted his retirement. Just so happened to be around the same time. So that process is moving. I think, in all fairness to Paul, I think he let the cat out of the bag a little bit early because the mayor and commission still have to approve this. And ultimately, even though it is a legislatively adopted percentage, ultimately the mayor and commission have the authority to decide where that money goes. So that's a little bit of a confusion that's out there as well. The Hotel Association was unanimous in their desire to do this for a lot of different reasons. I think it's a good thing. So long story short, I'm kind of beating around the bush. There will not be a hotel that will be built downtown that is owned and operated by the Classic Center. There is enough room vacancy and occupancy or lack thereof, even before COVID, to build and support the arena for what Paul is trying to do. Certainly with COVID, the numbers are down fairly significantly, but we feel like, and I think the Hotel Association is in lockstep agreement that if they're able to build an arena, what it can bring to the economic base for Athens is wonderful. But I think what got the ire of the Hotel Association up a little bit is there was no reason to overbid hotel room the community, because all that would do is drive down the rates for everybody, including the Classic Center, including the hotel that's owned and operated by the university. So felt like that was a good thing for the community. And I would just tell you that the kind of the benchmark is if you have 65% occupancy for a community hotel, broad base, not one hotel versus another, then it's probably time to build another. Before COVID, we were at about 54%. With COVID, we're at, and the numbers are going to be a little skewed because I'm going to back out the university's contract with the Continuing Education Center and with 2 other hotels for COVID relief. If you back those numbers out, we're still, even with the UGA football games, we're still at about 32%. Now, hopefully that'll grow, certainly as things begin to open up. But by 2023, when the arena is hopefully to be built, that'll take that time. And I think it would be fair to say from the Hotel Association's mentality is everybody there are private business owners, and there was some angst about private partnership and government partnership in building a hotel that would perhaps create some unfair tax advantages. So that was really the gist. But I think at the end of the day, it was a good agreement. It was a good discussion, but the mayor commission still have to accept that before it can go forward. Hopefully that didn't confuse the daylights out of anybody, but that's kind of where we are.
Ooh. Can I make a comment?
You certainly may.
That was great, Grant. And by comparison with the airport entrance, the word leveraging funding comes to mind. You know, that arena was a highly debated, contentious portion of the last round of funding, but they managed to get it through with aggressive, energetic promotion. And then this idea of sort of don't go for the whole amount, leverage part of it in different ways.
Right.
It has insights for the issue of things like an entrance to the airport. It doesn't have to all be, out of one pot of taxpayer money. It could be leveraged. Sure. Yeah. Very interesting.
You're muted, Les.
The CVB was one of our 3 partners in the SCASDEP, and Chuck. Is this person an interim position who's taking his place? I think her name was Katie Williams. I forget it, but
now I'll tell you what I know. She was hired. I guess August, September timeframe, and I don't think there's anything interim about what I'm hearing.
So she's someone we should definitely get in touch with. And secondly, does this hotel does it have any impact, you think, on the airport? We did have an issue 3 or 4 years ago before when David and I first came on board about some of the money for the airport. The airport share some city share of some marketing, and there was some dispute over the hotel tax where that money was going. But
Les, I can't answer where that was. I would tell you that legislatively and it's pretty prescript where it goes. Now it's prescript on what the mayor and commission vote. So we would certainly want to keep our eyes and ears open for where that goes. And it, it's a pass through too. That's even though it's a pass through, it's passed through to someone. So if you're staying in the hotels, we'd be paying that piece. It seems like a good partnership to get that arena, spread it to all those that would use. And everybody has to remember, once the SPLOS was voted in, there's no turning that back. So
Yeah.
that was not a point of negotiation. Some people thought it was, that we could go chain, but that's in the book. So
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Grant.
I'll be glad to share more as I hear the update, but I'm sure some of you may hear quicker and more thoroughly than I do, for sure.
Okay, we've had thank you, Grant, a jam-packed meeting. If everyone could just check your calendars, I'd love to see if we can toss around the November and December meeting while we have everyone together versus some big doodle survey.
And while you're looking, the last December, I think we canceled last December because it was just a slow month, and I've just put that out there. I don't know if you want to do that or actually have a meeting.
I think we should cancel personally. You and I talked about that, Mike. So I think the only reason we would do it is if we didn't if some big issue came up in November. But so I guess the first decision, if you look at the last week in November, our meeting would be 2 days before Thanksgiving. And then pre-COVID, 2/3 of us might not be here even then. So what we did last year was move it up a week. So get some thoughts from y'all on any preferences.
Either works for me.
Would the 24th still work for everyone?
Either works for me also.
Pardon?
Either day works for me also, the 17th, 24th.
Either works for me. I'm not going anywhere till January.
Yeah. So maybe this way, anyone it doesn't work for. Mike, would it work for you?
Yep, I'm good.
Yeah.
So I think we keep the 24th, but then unless someone objects, we cancel the December meeting. And if we found out on the 24th, we could always call an emergency.
Always could do that.
So can I get a motion to cancel the 24th meeting? So Keith, someone second it, Grant, all in favor? Looks like everyone. Okay, so because that meeting would have been literally 3 days before the Christmas holiday. Though it would have been right after it actually, but that's still that one's more likely no one to be around. So I think it's a slow month and we'll just cancel it. Okay.
And you mean December, right?
December.
I think you said November. Okay.
No, November we keep the 24th and we cancel December.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we have a lot of stuff. I'll summarize for next meeting. We have Lexington Corridor to talk about again. We'll talk about finalizing those 10 strategic performance measures, cut way back. We will talk about the economic impact, and I took notes, so if there's anything I missed, you'll catch me on it. Anyone else have some last parting words? Yes, Diane.
Well, we can have a sort of year-end tracker update.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be great. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I just wanted to say, sorry I was late, had a conflict with another meeting, but I appreciate what y'all are doing, and I'm always here with any questions, and I'm sure Mike and Angela had y'all covered. So hope everybody's doing good today.
Good, thank you, Josh. So Diane made a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor? I can't vote, but okay, super. Thank you all. Stay safe, and
thank you.
We have a few things going on individually during the month, but we'll keep in touch. So
all right.
Good.
Good seeing you all. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.